Welcome back to my channel. Delighted to say that ahead of a huge set of elections this week, I have with me the Reform UK leader, Richard Tice. Richard, first of all, how are you?
Well. My legs are a bit weary, Michael, but we're pushing on to the end of that. There's no doubt at all. And we've been blessed by the weather, and I know it's really good fun out there, out on the stump, talking to people, all over London and indeed beyond. And awareness of these elections is finally growing, but it's still not as much as I'd like.
Now, of course, you personally are standing for the GLA. How confident are you that this week you're going to be elected as a London Assembly member?
Oh, look, I think I'm a humble guy on this, Michael. It's really hard. We're just battling away. We're doing the best we can. We've got a great team, and I can't ask any more of my team and supporters than the fact that we've given it our all. And I think it could be. I think we've got a decent chance. We've got good awareness, good response, and no question, people do want to look at alternatives from the main two parties. They're very attracted to, our core message that we want to cut taxes, not increase them like the Tories want to do. And they're very attracted by the core messages that, we campaign never to lock down again. Being an Assembly member would give us a strong platform for that. That is still a significant risk. And also, across London, people are fuming about the anti-motorist measures of Sadiq Khan, the ULEZ extension, which targets the least well off, the poorest, the most. I mean, it is one of the most egregious discriminatory taxes I think I've ever seen. That if you can't afford a newish vehicle, then you're going to have to pay a load more tax. It's just fundamentally wrong when there's no support for those people who've got less money to be able to buy a new car. That's just wrong. And then likewise, the low traffic neighbourhoods is causing huge upset across London. I was at a protest on Saturday on it, in Islington, down in Brixton. There's a new one that's just been introduced, which is a local business just next door. Within 2 weeks, they'd lost 80% of their business. Someone had been in their car wash business for 20 years. So he's had to lay off 2/3 of his staff. So there's a lot of disgruntlement across London about some of these measures, and that's getting a very good hearing.
I mean, one of the things I've been talking about, Richard, on my channel is how I think the sort of Westminster bubble's completely lost the plot. That before a huge set of elections, in London, in Scotland, and Wales, across the country, police and crime commissioners, with local councils, you've had this obsession over the Downing Street curtains. Now, I don't think anyone outside of the bubble is talking about these things on the streets. Voters, in terms of what voters are talking about. Richard, am I wrong?
No, you are quite right, Michael. Once again, you've got a good sense of what people are saying. They're talking about the football. They're talking about the European Super League. No one is talking about Carrie Antoinette's curtains. That is the reality. Look, they know Boris. It's in the deal with Boris. He's chaotic. He's dishevelled. He's disorganised. He's financially, basically short of a few bob. And people just know that. What they're much more concerned about is, can we get on with our lives? Can we get rid of these restrictions? Can we please never have them again? And just get going again. And can we take off these hideous face masks? That's what people are talking about. I have to say, Michael, what really worries me on the street is the fear and propaganda that this government has permeated through the population is I think, really deep-seated. And you see, people who've been vaccinated. I'm 56. I've been vaccinated. Anybody over the age of, I think, give or take 50 now, who wants the vaccine's been vaccinated. And yet, those very same people who've been vaccinated are still walking down the high street with masks on, with their heads down, fearful. And I think it's tragic. I think it's going to take a long time for people's confidence to get back. And I think it's deeply irresponsible of this government to continue this propaganda, this fear-mongering, when actually leadership is all about motivating, infusing, encouraging, and giving confidence to people. And we've got the opposite.
Now, one of the things I've been looking into, Rich, in terms of the research, in terms of the polling that's being done, is I think the Labour Party, Keir Starmer's Labour Party, are in massive, massive trouble, even in their former strongholds in the so-called red wall that's looking a bit more blue nowadays. Obviously, the Reform Party is standing at the Hartlepool by-election. What's your feeling on the ground about, in those traditional Labour areas? Is their support as down as I believe it to be, and some of the research shows it to be?
I have to say, I've been surprised because I thought people would, under Keir Starmer, move swiftly back to business as normal. Labour voters in places like Hartlepool, it's not happening. Actually, people in Hartlepool, I think they are very willing to look elsewhere. We've got a great candidate there, John Prescott, who is probably working the hardest of all the candidates, getting a good response on the doorstep. Look, none of us are saying it's easy, of course, but I think he's going to make a really good showing. And it's quite clear that Labour voters, that they're prepared to come over to Reform. They're quite prepared to go over to the Tories. So I think it's less likely than more likely that Labour will win Hartlepool. So Labour have got a problem. Their local candidate's got a problem. And I think there is a big structural shift going on where essentially London is becoming more Labour and the North is becoming less Labour. And maybe it's something a bit like the Liberals 100 years ago, Michael, or maybe it's something a bit like what happened to Labour in Scotland, whenever it was, sort of 7-8 years ago. Things are shifting, and we're actually very hopeful there's a couple of mayoral elections in Doncaster and in West Yorkshire, where we've got two great local candidates from the Asian community who I think will do really, really well.
Really, a lot of people disconnected, certainly on my channel. And I think when you look at the polling now, the majority of Brits want to do away with the BBC licence fee. Many people on my channel now have just had enough of the BBC. They don't think it's reformable. They don't think there should be a BBC licence fee. And I saw that you tweeted recently, BBC bias against Reform Party being urgently investigated by Ofcom, with decision expected on Tuesday. Reform needed of this bloated, unfair broadcaster. Richard, can you explain to people what exactly is going on?
Yeah, well, look, your viewers, Michael, are quite right. The BBC is bloated. It's massively wasteful. I think there is a residual resentment against Reform because we're obviously we're the Brexit party. There's a residual resentment against the Brexit success that we were also involved in. And what's happened is that in Wales, there's a party, we all believe in democracy, called Abolish the Welsh Assembly. They've got one policy, which is it does what it says on the tin, and that's fine. But on the basis of one rogue poll, the BBC decided to include them in the leaders' debate, even though they weren't in the last two elections in 2019. We won one of those two elections in Wales, and the BBC refused to include us in that leaders' debate. And so we made an objection, and Ofcom have recognised that there are very serious, what they call substantive issues at stake. And so they are convening an urgent committee. The leaders' debate was last Thursday. We formalised the complaint to Ofcom on Friday morning. By Friday afternoon, Ofcom had agreed that there were substantive issues that needed urgent review. They're going to make a ruling on Tuesday, and let's see what that says. But I very much hope that Ofcom come down in our favour. And if they do, I think that will be a proper, significant mark in the sand about BBC impartiality. We'll then obviously have to talk about remedial action. But, it's not good enough. And it's not good enough from a impartiality point of view. It's not good enough from a waste of taxpayers' cash point of view. And bluntly, in today's world, whatever your political leanings, in today's world, much of the BBC is being delivered on a voluntary basis, on a subscription basis by other channels, whether it's Apple TV, Amazon Prime Video, Netflix, and others. Why are we being forced, obligated, against threat of fines and potentially going to jail in order to have this compulsory additional tax? It's completely wrong. And look, I'm over 50. I still occasionally, I will admit, occasionally watch the BBC, but not very often. But I mean, my two sons are in their 20s. They never watch the BBC. They get all their news and everything through all sorts of other sources.
Well, including channels like mine, I hope, here on YouTube.
Including channels like yours.
But finally, Richard, you know, unique set of elections, a huge set of elections. What does a good week for you look like in terms of the Reform Party after Thursday?
But clearly, we'd be delighted to get some candidates elected into positions, whether it's assembly positions, the Welsh Senedd positions, whether it's councillors. You know, the dream scenario, of course, would be an MP in Westminster representing Hartlepool. That would be, you know, knocking the ball out of the park, so to speak. But we're realistic. It's difficult campaigning. It was impossible to campaign until just a few weeks ago. Getting the message out there has been hard with a media that's been against us. So, but this is right. We're viewing this, and we've said to all our hundreds and hundreds of candidates, this is a building block towards council elections next May. There are 1,800 council seats up for grabs in London alone. And then towards the general election, which is actually only 3 years away in May or June of 2024. So it's the beginning of a journey. We're working hard. We're getting a good reception. There is an appetite for reform. And let's see what happens on Thursday. And you know, if things go against us, then you know we're realists. We dust ourselves down. And we say, right, we've got to work even harder, roll our sleeves up a bit higher up the arm, and get stuck in, get on with it.
Richard, it'd be great to catch up after Thursday's set of elections, and we can sort of survey the landscape then. Thanks for joining me today. We'll speak again soon.
Great, thanks, Michael.